Hello, Happy New Year. Uh, Happy Black History Month. It is the first week of February, and I am coming to you from my home after a wonderful trip in Cuba. And we're going to bookmark that. I want to talk all about it. I have to talk about all of my travels, actually, but I wanted to really continue these introductory discussions about my perspective. So, welcome. My name is Dr. Keisha Ducree, and your friendly neighborhood critical Black feminist geographer, right? And I want to talk today. I want to provide a response to a great video. Really, a woman who's an inspiration to my decision to take what I talk about in the classroom and bring it to YouTube and to do my work in the company that I've created called Sojourners. And her name is Stephanie Perry. So about a month ago, Stephanie, who is the co-founder of Exodus Summit, which is a intentional community of Black women, primarily in the United States, who have decided to move abroad. And just like many of the others, thousands of women who came across her videos with her co-founder Rashida Dow of Exodus Summit, I was at a place in my own personal life and in my professional life where these issues resonated for me. And so her video that I'm responding to today is called, bear with me, the long title, Can a Bunch of Black Women Just Buy Up Land and Move Abroad Together? I'll put a link to the video in the description, but it's can a bunch of Black women just buy up land and move abroad together? And I thought that this video is perfect because of my focus on Black feminist geography. Now, when Stephanie introduces this video, she says there are more cons than pros. She has some great gems that I want to discuss and expound upon through this idea of Black feminist geography. Um, so she has more cons. I agree with almost with everything that Stephanie Perry discusses. I believe the idea that Black women work too hard, they could embrace a life of ease, that the US systems of both white supremacy and patriarchy have created this unique system of oppression for Black women. And that there are opportunities for us to leave those systems and to embrace a life of ease abroad. I'm down with that. But she does come on hard on the idea of just buying up land, and she has a great reason. In short, she calls it colonizer 2.0. This is true. And now I'll expand upon her gems. But I want to push back just a little because I think when I describe Black feminist geographies to you, that the idea is not far-fetched at all. That there is a certain freedom and liberation in doing it together as a community. But let me first start with a working definition of Black feminist geographies, and then I'll jump into her gems and talk about how there are a couple of pros along with the cons, and you have to make a decision for you. So first, what is Black feminist geographies? And I decided that I would Google it, even though I have an entire course on it that I taught year before last, because I wanted to provide kind of a general definition. And so the Google said that Black feminist geographies examines the intersection of Blackness, gender, and space. And that's broad and short and sweet. Okay, Black feminist geographies from the Google, according to the Google, examines the intersection of. So these points converge together. The issue related to Blackness, the issues related to gender, specifically Black women. I would be more specific than just gender, but Black women, and the issue of space. Space, geography, how space is organized, how it's produced, how it's used to oppress, how it is how new spaces are created, like by Black women in Exodus Summit, to find freedom. And in the cases of Black women who cannot, will not, should not, whatever it is, be able to move abroad as a case to find freedom and liberation, how have Black women I study, for example, how Black women have done that within these oppressive spaces. So that's what Black Feminist Geography is. And it's really centering Black women. It's not just about the Black community in and of itself. It's not, in terms of this, it's not just about Black people. It's certainly not about all women. It's really about Black women and how they exist in space or move about space. So that's why Stephanie's video, "Can a bunch of Black women buy up land and move abroad together?" is such an excellent way for me. When I saw it, I was like, yes, this is a great way to explain it. So there are three kind of classic works if you want to read more about these. Like, I'm hearing you, I get this. And there are three books. I'm going to just introduce them very briefly. I'll put links to them, descriptions of them into the description. And if you are really interested in them, I would love to host maybe a deep dive into either any of these books. So the three books are the classic academic text is really used in classrooms about introducing the idea of Black geographies, the introduction of centering Black people in space. Is a book by Professor, Canadian Black geographer Catherine McKittrick. The name of it is Demonic Grounds: Cartographies of Black Women and the Cartographies of Struggle. Let me slow down. Catherine McKittrick writes a book called Demonic Grounds, Black Women and the Cartographies of Struggle. It's a really good book. It's really intense. And so if you pick it up and you're like, hey, what are you talking about? I would love to do a deep dive into that. She references one of the chapters in her book is dedicated to the second book that I find to be very useful in the discussion of Black feminist geographies. And that's the book Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl by Harriet Jacobs. You may have read it, maybe, if you were in a pretty progressive high school, but it is the memoir of a fugitive slave, a fugitive enslaved woman. And so it's a very interesting read. Again, Kitcher talks about it, and it's a memoir. And what part of the memoir, the idea of Black women in space, is that Harriet, her also known as Linda Brent, Harriet escapes the sexual predatory advances of her enslaver by acting like she escaped, and she did escape his clutches. But for years, she lived in an attic, tiny box of an attic, before she could make her final escape. And she watched over her children. It is a harrowing story. It is a triumphant story. And that is a classic example of Black feminist geographies as well. And then finally is the autobiography of Assata Shakur. And Assata Shakur is a Black revolutionary who went through a lot in terms of the criminal justice system. It goes her life, and she eventually finds liberation. She still remains on the most wanted list in the United States, but she has found her liberation by being invited by Cuba, where she remains to this day. So those are kind of three classic texts that I would happy to go to a deep dive in, but those are kind of examples of Black women, centering Black women, their experiences, finding freedom in space, sometimes outside of the nation state, like United States in the case of Assata Shakur, and sometimes it's inside an oppressive space. She's lit her, and her predator is looking for her, and she is there, but she is unseen. She is hidden, and she remains hidden until she can finally escape, which takes years. So what does it have to do with kind of a bunch of women buy up land and move abroad together? So the gems that have in my notes here, the gems that Stephanie Perry delivers to us are amazing. She says that, there are more cons than pros. She says that Black women should definitely leave, and moving abroad is better, but they are carrying with them, and this is really important, they're carrying with them when they move the baggage weight of racism and sexism, and I call it patriarchy. Sexism sounds to me not specific enough. I want to say patriarchy. So we can say they're carrying, she says they should leave, but they're also carrying the weight and the baggage of white supremacy and patriarchy that's inherent to the US system. She talks in passing, but I think it's a really important gem about, she provides examples about public transportation in the United States. And she points out how, which is another spatial project that I write about, is that highways carve up cities and cause kind of intentional segregation in the United States. So another example of kind of when we talk about Black geographies is the process, the ongoing process of racial segregation, whether it's residential segregation, whether it is job category, income discrimination. So there's this separation that happens, and the physical separation of Black communities from the rest of cities is through the building, constructing highways straight through the heart of those cities. And there are primary examples of that. So she mentioned it in passing, in terms of public transportation being something that's really important. But really, public transportation in terms of Black geographies is a critical means by which there is inequality. And again, that's a subject that I love to discuss as well. She talks about what Black women are ultimately trying to find in their move abroad, right? Get from underneath that baggage, right? Moving easily, finding an affordable lifestyle, contributing to their financial and social well-being. She talks about trying to get out of the hustle culture. Girl, I know. And then she talks about what her purpose is in terms of operating in a community. Um, and so why she doesn't think, even though she believes Black women should, and she's created the Exodus community, but she doesn't agree with the idea of Black women actually getting together, buying up land, and moving together for very valid reasons. And the two kind of most important ones that she points as cons for that is that it's going to be a colonizer 2.0. And when you couple that with the idea that we are trying to heal, that we have generational trauma attached to us from operating in a society with oppressive systems of white supremacy and patriarchy. So we don't know any other way. We have to be free and heal to understand how to move about the world without all that baggage. But our first immediate step, if we buy up land and create community of other Black expats like us, that we were brought up in colonizing projects and that we only know how to exert colonizing projects. And I was like, oh, but, and then I put my hand down, or my literal hand down, because it's true. We have to heal first. And it is very true that without the process of healing, we're only going to recreate those injustices. And I have a kind of a personal note. So, in my own journey to find and settle abroad, a long term journey, I spent some time. I've been in 4 countries in the last since November. I've been in 4 countries, really doing a lot of country scouting, dating. And I was talking to another group of expats, and they wanted to create, they were very intentional. They were great hearts, great heart. But despite our compassion and empathy, we grew up in a colonizing system. And I felt, I talked about decolonization when you travel, and I felt even though they were settling down, there was still a bit of a colonial lens. They wanted to create an intentional space for Black moms in the communities they were in. And that was great, right? And they were thinking about, we want to do this, and we want to do this, and we want to do this, and we want to invite other Black women. We don't want it just to be expat. We want to make this a space for all women and children. And I was just thinking to myself, well, is that what they want? Is that what you want? Is that what they want? Did you ask? So that was a great example. I didn't share this because I was not there to minister. I was there to listen. But it occurred to me, particularly in light of what they were planning, and the idea of, if we don't try to heal, we only become colonizers ourselves. They didn't buy up land, but they were thinking about collectively operating a particular space for that's open to all women without consulting the majority women that were there, if that is what they needed. And so that is colonizing. Even though they had good intentions, that was colonizing. What would it mean to have a decolonial stance in that instance? What would it mean if that was a stance in this project, this Black Feminist Geographical project? It would be meeting with women, asking them, meeting with them with the sole purpose of active listening and finding common ground on specific issues and working collaboratively and collectively. It is not, I'm going to be here and this is what I want to set up and you can come because I'm compassionate. Because that's what the missionaries thought too. I'm just saying. So I'm there. That is definitely something that Stephanie hit upon, which is right. She used the example of Liberia and how that was not peace and ease. And so we have to be careful, and we have to acknowledge that when we are traveling, when we do settle abroad, if we're slow traveling or settling, that we do have to heal. It is a healing process of intergenerational trauma to be able to do that. But I do believe that we could, maybe not now, maybe there's a process down the line that we could heal and do the work and find freedom and move towards a collective understanding and space. I do. Not immediately, because that is colonizer 2.0. But I do believe, from a Black feminist geographic perspective, that we can, through the evolution of all this stuff, come to create spaces. I don't know about buying land. I don't know about what bringing capital means. But if we can do something collaboratively, after we've gone through the process of shedding our trauma from living in these systems, that we could find something that in Black studies we call Ubuntu. Ubuntu, Ubuntu, is a South African word, Xhosa word, that means I am because we are. This collective understanding. And if you know anything about the civil rights history, that collective work is what made modern civil rights struggles possible. It was the collective work that made these things possible. So I am more optimistic, Stephanie, I'm more optimistic about working in community collectively, physically, not just in terms of an intellectual group or discussion group or accountability group. That there is a possibility for Black women to work as Ubuntu collectively with expats and indigenous women to create something that is safe and equitable for our families. But I also agree that if we don't do the work that comes beforehand, then that's not possible. And then, yeah, I think that's the point that I want to make, especially with, I want to keep this short. And the other point that she makes that I'll just leave there, she says that, another reason why that won't work is because everybody doesn't want the same thing. And so if you create this space here based on this, you might want to move, or in your healing process, that might not be where you want to be located. And we all have our circumstances of bringing our families or bringing our children or bringing our elders, and things are different times that are needed. And I agree with that too. So the only place that we differ is, I think, is where we agree, where Stephanie and I converge, are on the finding freedom. We have to find freedom outside of the boundaries of which the U.S. operates: colonizing, imperialism, the militaristic, the patriarchy, the white supremacy, all that. And we are feeling it. It's coming at us quickly right now. And part of moving is not to bring that baggage weight with you, but shedding that, and living and embracing freedom and ease and well-being, mental well-being, bodily well-being, bodily autonomy, financial freedom, not having to be worried all the time. And that's a process, and that takes time. But where we converge, I think that if we can heal, however long that takes, 10, 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, maybe our sons and daughters can have enough freedom to come to a collective space, and that we can work collaboratively in our new places and collaborate and work with respect, to create spaces that benefit a whole host of people. I remember the night before the election, I was in the Caribbean coast of Costa Rica. And the pessimist that I am, I was like, I don't know. My son, my 9-year-old, was like, is Kamala going to win, mommy? And I was honest. I said, I don't know. We've done all that, people who support her have done all that we can. I don't know. I can't promise that to you. And I remember writing the night before, feeling as strange as I did the night before 2016 election. I had strong reservations, but I didn't want to express them because I didn't want to steal anybody's joy. But I wrote that night, I said, look, I'm in Costa Rica and they have land for sale. And if anybody wants to go in for a compound, I'm your girl. And I wrote that tongue in cheek, and what happened the next morning. And I received more responses about, got a couple more likes. And I still feel that way, that I would love to bring a community with me. But, I do have healing to do. But I am still open to that compound somewhere, if not Costa Rica, somewhere else. But I do believe in the collective resistance, that we've come as far as we have, and stayed and survived as much as we have by collective comfort, community, and resistance. And so I think that a bunch of Black women can buy land and move abroad together. But I also realize that we got to deal with our own ish, before we go in and replicate the colonizing projects that we have been held under. So Let me hear your thoughts. Would you be interested in getting a compound with your homies now? How long do you think that your healing will take place? If you like this discussion, please feel free and like and subscribe. Until next time, bye.